Hello, Angela. How are you?
I'm good, Fred. So good to see you. You're looking fantastic.
Thank you. You too. Angela was one of the first podcasts that invited me onto her podcast. That was like maybe last
Gosh,
December-ish, maybe
or
almost a year.
or a little further back. It's been a while.
It's been
I
a
should have looked
while.
it up, but I did not.
Yeah, I could have looked
I
it
was
up too.
just I was just honored to have you on because I really loved your story and your perspective.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciated you having me on, and I love your story and your perspective. And
Thank you.
you've compiled that into a book yourself. So
Yes.
on this podcast, we're talking to emerging and unique authors, or maybe somebody like yourself who fits into both categories. So what
Right.
would you say you are?
I would say I am. Yes, I think I probably fit both of those categories. I mean, I have I've written poetry since elementary school.
Mhm.
The very first poem in the book is actually that elementary school poem that I received.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't remember if I received awards for that. There was a short story too. One of those things is what I had received an award for, and so it's the one titled "A Poem," and
Mhm.
it's just what is a poem, and they're just beautiful little stories. So I think that writing was also my way of processing. And so
Mhm.
I kept as well the poetry I thought was good.
Mhm.
you know, I literally kept it in a box, and it traveled with me throughout life.
Mhm.
And when I was younger, my mom had always told me, being an artist or author or anything like that is not something that will pay the bills. So
Mhm.
don't do it. Well, I have a disability, my hands don't work right,
Mhm.
and it really came to a point where that was the only way forward, was to go through this poetry, and to, if I wanted to give anything back, then I was trying to figure out a way I could give back, and it turned
Mhm.
out that this seemed to be that way for me.
Awesome. So why don't we take a step or two back and
Mhm.
talk about your giving back? And we mentioned your podcast, but we didn't mention what the podcast is called. So maybe you can give a little shout out to your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have a podcast called Relatively Damaged, where we talk about struggle and how someone finds hope and healing, which I really believe in some ways it inspired me to continue with my dream.
Mhm. And you're doing a
Yeah.
great job with the podcast. You're up to over 100 episodes now, I think.
Yeah, I think almost two, we're getting close to two. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
that's a
Yeah.
lot of giving
I,
back.
yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. I just don't always think about it as that, because I feel like it's my job to provide the environment for other people to tell their stories.
Mhm.
And that podcast is not really about me so much as it is about all of the diverse ways that people struggle, and all of the very diverse ways that they find a way to keep moving forward.
Mhm. So it is about you.
I guess in some ways, but the stories are not mine.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, I think it inspired me. Doing that inspired me. It was part of the path, part of the journey, and I
Mhm.
love it.
Mhm.
Anytime well, let me take that back. I was gonna say anytime I'm down, I listen to it. Well, that's not true, because sometimes in the pits of hell, or when it feels like you're in the pits of hell,
Yeah.
and I recognized this in the last year, it was like I was like, forget that. I'm not listening to my podcast for inspiration. I don't they're selling rainbows and butterflies, because sometimes you get to the bottom of the crevice, if you will,
Yeah.
and you just need to sit there for a minute, because everybody else is, even if they had been there, they don't understand in that moment. Sometimes those are the feelings that come up, like no one else could possibly understand, and I just need to deal with it.
So in your book, which is poetry, if people can't see your
Oh yeah.
logo behind you. Um, are there any rainbows and butterflies in your poetry, or do they reflect your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about, well, not a lot. I have a few poems about suicide. I have poems about loss. I have poems about hopes and dreams. My favorite one at the very end is called Something Extraordinary. And if you'd
Mhm.
like, I can read it for you.
I'd be honored.
Awesome. On the day that Christ was born, a song came into my heart. At the time that is nearing soon, someone loved me from their heart. And from that love I learned, I have some love to give, not only to every family friend, but to every soul that lives.
That's a fantastic little poem.
Yeah, so if that's rainbows and butterflies, which maybe it is a little bit,
Hmm.
it's there to remind me that even if just one person loves me from their heart, I
Hmm.
can keep moving forward and I might also have love to give too.
I think you obviously do. So, where can people find your book or find you?
Oh, thank you. Well, you could, the podcast is on almost all the platforms that I too many to name at this point in time.
Hmm.
So just look up Relatively Damaged by Damaged Parents. I think it might come up if you just look up Damaged Parents, because I realize sometimes I don't know how to spell relatively. Um, and then the book is on Amazon right now. You can get
Hmm.
the ebook and also the paperback. And then we're just waiting for the approval from Audible, at which point they will send it out to iTunes and things like that.
So, you've recorded it already.
I have, yeah.
What was
It
that
was
like?
so emotional
Hmm.
because, so like I said, a lot of these poems came from past experience, so it's really like diving back into the past, somewhat like a, maybe even a little bit like a memoir of
Hmm.
processing that pain. And so when I was reading through some of the ones that I remembered why exactly I wrote them and they triggered that memory,
Hmm.
then I would have to take a break. Because when I read them, I really, really it was so important to me to get
Hmm.
into the character of the feeling of how I felt when I wrote it so that that
Sure.
emotion would come across in the
Hmm.
audible version, or in the audio version, I should say.
So, do you have any poems that are left to be put into maybe edition number two?
I do. Yeah. So this was about a little less than half of what I had.
Hmm.
And then I'm gonna have more poems from a lost soul, and then poems from a former lost soul. So really the
Oh,
series is about the journey
hmm,
of finding peace.
awesome. And is there anything quirky that people should know about you that might be reflected in the poems that you write?
Some of them, I have a little bit of a sense of humor. Like I have one called Mom, um, and at the end it's like, but of course, Mother, like, so and in fact, my mom got the book and was reading it,
Hmm.
and she's like, I don't see your humor. I said, well, Mom, there's one in there that's like happy, 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 sad. And she's like, oh, and and then and the mother one, and she just did not see the humor in it. And I
Hmm.
was just kind of chuckling, um, because to me it was, throughout the entire poem about mom, I'm talking mom, 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 and then, oh, but it's mother, like,
Hmm.
so to me, that's funny. I don't know if to everyone that's funny, but um, yeah. And I do also talk about suicide and rape,
Hmm.
and things like that, which uh, I don't know if that's quirky, but they're very real feelings. I also talk
Hmm.
about confusing relationships. There's one called Abused where it's like, I'm carrying so much in this poem about this other person, and this other person
Hmm.
is just not giving back. And but they are taking advantage of what I'm giving, you know. So at the very end of that poem, it's I say, you know, I'm not going to lose my courage when they're not saying, you know, and I'm not going to
Mhm.
lose myself. But it's very clear early in the poem, I totally lost myself in them, you know.
Mhm.
And I think that I was, unbeknownst to me, setting myself up to be in an abusive situation.
Mhm. That's unfortunate. I also think it's fairly common that people can get stuck in that ruminating mindset, and you just keep going over and over and over something, and you can't break that chain of thought to help put yourself in a better position.
Right. Or you just want to be loved so badly that you think if I just did this right, or if I just did that right, then maybe they
Mhm.
would love me back. And that's not true, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's where I'm fighting back at the end of the poem that,
Mhm.
you know, I'm not going to lose myself. I'm just
Mhm.
not going to do it. Even though I think I did in real life.
Mhm. So what's Mom's opinion now that you're a published author?
She loves it.
Mhm.
She has not yet written a review or anything. She says she cannot
Mom,
find the
get on
words.
it. Yeah.
I know. She says she keeps going to put something into words and it's just not right. And
Mhm.
um she actually did tell me she did not realize I was so talented.
Mhm.
Those were her words, and the funny thing is I still question it. And
Is that how you got your
yeah.
surname?
No.
Because you realize you're
I
talented?
married I married into I married a man with the last name Talent.
A very talented family. Okay.
Right.
So we're coming near the end, unfortunately. So I want to go to my random questions for you, if that's okay. So
Go
if you
for it.
could pick a number from 1 to 25, and I'll actually try and read them because I'm in the dark here.
Say 8.
8. So this is in the what do you like category. And if you had an unlimited budget and could buy any painting from any artist in the world, what would you buy?
I'm gonna go with the Mona Lisa
Okay.
because of the subtlety
Mhm.
of it. You know, the wonder this to me it's a very stoic face from different, and yet from another, if I move around I can see that there's that subtle smile.
Mhm. Yeah, it's one of those, it's one of the first paintings that really emphasized foreground and background, and that
Mhm.
allowed you to see it from not just looking straight on. So it's very
Yeah.
multifaceted. I think that's why it might be a little bit popular.
Probably. I did get
Yeah.
to see it once, so
Hmm.
in real
Oh,
life. So that was
hopefully you'll see it
fantastic.
again.
I hope so. That would be beautiful. Okay. I know you have more
Okay.
questions.
Yes. So this is writing self-talk from 1 to 13. Pick one.
Let's go with 8 again.
Okay. 8. What talent would you most like to have that you don't currently think? And this is outside of your husband because he's a talent you already have.
My ex-husband, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, hmm, that's a tough question. What talent would I like? Um, I f- I wish I were better at like I do the podcast and everything. I wish I was better at finishing my sentences and um felt more confident in um knowing exactly what to say, you
Mhm.
know, not having to really think. Like when I get nervous, I'll just talk and instead of really going into my heart and pausing, you know. So
I,
I feel like I wish that I was better at that, and I'm
I
working
think
on it.
that's pretty common. People freeze up when they are public speaking, and I've had it happen to me as well. Not that I'm a perfect speaker, but I
Yeah,
do like to speak. Okay. Can I
yeah.
end off with one last request from you?
Sure.
a pearl of wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yes. As far as becoming an author or achieving any goal, I think the most important is keep taking the next right step, whatever that is for you. Number one. Number two, know that it's going to feel awkward and scary, and there's going to be things that you don't know, and they will reveal themselves as in their own time. Even if it comes to understanding a computer program, when they change stuff up on the computer or the phone,
For sure.
I get frustrated. um, and then I figure it out. So remembering that if you're frustrated, you're probably really close to figuring it out. Be patient.
And there's always YouTube to look for, some sort of tutorial.
Exactly.
So,
And even then, though, sometimes it's like, how do I do that? That doesn't make sense. Or it's an old
mhm.
YouTube, right? It's okay. Frustration is part of the human experience. It's one of those great feelings that we get to have.
And it's how you grow.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay. So I'm going to wrap up now. And I'd like you to just give one more reminder who you are, what your book is, and how people can find you, please.
Thank you. I'm Angela Talent with Poems from a Lost Soul and the podcast Relatively Damaged by Damaged Parents. You can find my website at damagedparents.com. The book is also on there too under the title Poetry. You can go to that page. And I think on all social medias, yes, you can find me under Damaged Parents as my tag.
Ah, awesome. Thank you, Angela, so much for being on today.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. I'm super excited to have gotten to be here with you.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.